Peter Greenberg's live global travel update is presented to you by Colette. Discover the world. Guided travel since 1918.
Hello, everybody. Happy Friday for the last day of February 2025. Greeting you from the island of Malta, actually in Valletta today. And of course, you can always reach me. You know how to do that on the side here on the screen, answer all your questions and comments. But let's get right to the news, and lots of it. We continue with air safety issues this week, otherwise known as close calls, go-arounds, aborted takeoffs, aborted landings, all due to what we call runway incursions on the ground. This is not a new fact and a new problem. In fact, there were more runway incursions in 2024, last year, than there were in the decade preceding it. And this year is shaping up to be another bad year. Now, what do we mean by a runway incursion? Simple. It means that during a takeoff or a landing by one plane, there's another plane on or near the runway or taxiway that shouldn't be there, and in fact poses an immediate safety risk simply because of a possible collision. The most recent example happened earlier this week at Chicago's Midway Airport. As a Southwest Airlines plane was approaching, someone actually caught it on video. I'm going to run it in a second, and when you look at the video, wait till the very last second to see two things. One, the plane was literally, meaning the Southwest plane, was literally about 2 seconds or 3 seconds from having the tires hit the runway landing, when a small private jet cut right in front of them. And luckily for everybody, the Southwest Airlines pilots were able to spool up those engines and throttle out of there quickly. They had maybe a second to make that decision and do a go around, meaning continue a takeoff roll from the landing roll and go back into the pattern, come back and land. Everybody was okay. But what it points to is a continuing problem of airport runway, taxiway, and tarmac capacity. First, we'll talk about that later, but first, Anthony, please roll the video. You saw it, right? That's a strong visual image of how close things really got at Chicago's Midway. This is happening more and more. This is not an issue that really is FAA related as much as it is airport related, because it's one thing for an air traffic controller to clear a plane to land, but who's talking to the planes on the ground? Well, the ground controllers are. It is an FAA issue. But let's go beyond that. It's an airline scheduling issue when you already have congested airports. How many times have you landed at an airport safely where then you were stuck out there because you couldn't cross a parallel runway because too many planes were either waiting to take off or too many planes were lined up to land? That's problem number one. Then you had to cross the runway and do it quickly when you got permission to do so from the tower. You couldn't idly go by. Then there's the other problem of what happened when you got near the terminal, meaning the jetways and the gates, because either your gate was occupied or your plane or the plane before you had pushed out or was pushing out, and now you got to squeeze in there. The margin of error here is decreasing every day as airports become more congested on the ground. Wingtip to wingtip distances are pretty close. That's why you've seen for the last, 15 years, the runway marshals, those guys with the orange cones on either side of the plane at wing level, trying to guide the plane in. But it's really not really helping when you've got that capacity issue. And it gets down to airline scheduling. If you're scheduling too many planes to land at the same time and they can't get to the gate, or they do get to the gate and they can't move, you have a recipe for disaster. We had one recently in Seattle where the right wing of a Japan Airlines 787 sliced into the tail of a parked Delta Airlines 737. It's not just planes hitting planes, it's runway vehicles hitting planes, tugs, baggage carts, catering trucks. It's again a matter of basic physical space. So that's issue number one that we can talk about this week. Issue number two is one we talked about every week, but now it's come up to the front again because Elon Musk has said he himself is going to change the air traffic system and improve air safety. What's his solution? Well, one obvious solution is, hey, hire more air traffic controllers. How long have we been talking about this problem, right? We have 3 air traffic control centers right now in America that are operating below 85% staffing thresholds. What that means is they're forcing the controllers who do work to work mandatory overtime. The one job on the planet nobody should work overtime for, right? So the latest Musk solution I find interesting, and I'm not necessarily opposed to it. He's saying, let's bring back retired air traffic controllers and hire them again. You know, I'd much rather have a 68-year-old excellent air traffic controller coming back into the workforce than waiting to train somebody who's 22 for 3 years to take control of the console. Makes sense. And, you know, if an air traffic controller, it's one thing to say there's a mandatory physical retirement age of a pilot at 60 or 65. We understand the sort of at least the basic reasoning behind that. You don't want anybody having a medical issue or dying in the cockpit, although that rarely happens. But for an air traffic controller, hey, if the guy's alert and ready at 80, I'll take him. We need more people who are highly trained to do that job. The other thing Elon Musk is suggesting is to use Starlink, that's his great satellite communication system, to start replacing the antiquated equipment, and it is antiquated, at FAA control towers. And you know what? I know that's self-serving about Starlink, but he does have a point. The FAA is using antiquated technology. It's beyond embarrassing. It creates problems. The FAA has been talking about next-gen equipment for about 2 generations now, and they've never gotten ahead of the game. That gets down to federal procurement regulations. Talk about cutting red tape. By the time they finish their cost-benefit analysis on installing new equipment and getting the approval and the budget for that new equipment, it's old equipment. They've never gotten ahead of the game. Time to change the rules on that and get up to speed literally. So we'll see what happens there. But there's another issue. And the other issue is basic federal employee morale right now. I'm not telling you anything new when I tell you that morale is at its lowest point that I've ever seen at many federal agencies. And that affects not just the people who work there or who used to work there, it affects their opportunity to recruit anybody new who thinks the minute they get their job, they're going to get fired. So they better deal with that, especially with critical agencies, meaning critical safety agencies, whether it's the FAA or the Highway Safety Administration or the guys who control the nuclear weapons. I don't care who it is, fix the morale problem, get these guys back on the job in critical safety areas, or we will have a problem. Maybe not tomorrow. The long-term effects of low morale with the current workforce and no confidence in a prospective workforce is something that's a serious issue and something we have to deal with. In any case, the runway incursions and the tarmac slow motion collisions are a real problem, much more immediate than you might think, and something that can be easily dealt with. So let's see what our new Secretary of Transportation does, as well as the new FAA administrator. But the evidence is overwhelming here, and airports themselves can actually weigh in. I've said this before, I'll say it again. There's not a runway in the world, whether you're in Copenhagen or Calcutta, that can accommodate more than 23 takeoffs in any 1 hour, given about a 2.5-minute separation between takeoffs, right? Basic math. So why do they allow the airlines to schedule 40 departures from these airports at 8 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the afternoon? You got a problem baked into that. It's called airport capacity and congestion. And when you have that, you have what you have when you saw it at Midway, and you have what you have when you saw it at Seattle. And that's a problem that needs to be addressed immediately. And it can be addressed immediately because it involves no new technology, no new equipment. But how about this? New thinking, common sense, do the math. The numbers don't add up right now, and it's benefiting nobody. Stop trying to be competitive on schedule. Start being competitive on common sense. That's my lecture for this morning, this afternoon, or this evening, depending on where you're watching me from. And as I said at the beginning, we're coming to you today from the Iniala, a wonderful hotel right here in Valletta in Malta. And if you've never been to Malta, you're missing out. I've been coming for about 30 years. It's an incredible location. Check out just the history here. Everybody who you've ever imagined and read about or studied came through Malta at one point or another, and they left their mark. And it's just fascinating to walk the streets of not just Valletta, but the islands of Gozo, and not necessarily streets, but the island of Camino as well. And we'll be doing one of our television specials later this year on Hidden Malta, part of our series. Speaking of that, Hidden Uganda is now available on PBS, and as of March 17th, it begins streaming on Amazon and Apple TV. Since I mentioned it, Anthony, run the clip.
Get set for a very special journey deep into the heart of Africa, to a place most people have never experienced. I'm Peter Greenberg, and join me as we navigate a country where old rhythms live on and ancient instruments create modern sounds. A land of distant wonders and the promise of endless bounties, and all still waiting to be discovered. Welcome to Hidden Uganda.
Again, it's available on PBS starting this month, and then on March 17th, it's available on Amazon and Apple TV Plus. So check all the listings that you know to check, and I hope you'll enjoy it as much as we enjoyed making it. Moving on from that, a little bit of a lighter note before we get to your questions. I've come across some very interesting laws in countries that you may not be aware of, but you need to be forewarned so you can be forearmed. How about this? These are absurd laws that are on the books. Here we go. And some of it's pretty funny. There's actually a law forbidding the feeding of pigeons in Venice. Have you been to Venice? Have you seen the pigeons? Have you seen the people out there feeding them? Well, there may be a law, but I've never seen it enforced. In Cyprus, I love this one, it's illegal to eat or drink anything while driving. I've never seen it enforced. In Cambodia, they get very specific. If you want to celebrate on New Year's Eve, if you bring a water gun, it's against the law. I have no idea why. Now, one that's actually rigidly enforced is in Singapore, and you may know it already. It's a ban on anyone chewing gum. That's it. If you chew gum in Singapore, you're arrested. How about that? Sometimes you even get caned. Remember that story? And finally, another law that's not enforced. I'm laughing. It's legally required to wear underwear in public if you're in Thailand. Okay, there you go. That's my funny laws for the day on February 28th, 2025. Some other things to talk about, and that, of course, is a study that just came out. We've all talked about, climate change and rising sea levels. Who thought it would actually contribute to longer commute times and commuter delays? It's true. Research that looked at 74 million local commuting routes in the United States revealed that rising water levels have added an average of 23 minutes to your commute times, especially for those living in coastal communities. And by 2060, as long as we're around that long, even a modest sea rise level could increase that commute delay by tenfold. I don't think I'll be around by 2060, so you'll just have to tell me about it in the afterlife. But in any case, something to know about. And finally, some good news perhaps. There are some individual airports and routes that are really quite affordable right now in the US. These are average airfares. How about this? One route from Birmingham, Alabama to Fort Lauderdale, $59. Phoenix to San Diego, $35. Chicago to Detroit costs as little as $42. And fares from Atlanta to New York have been as low as $36. And that's just in the last week. Obviously, this is not every available seat on every available flight, but the fares are actually going down. And one reason why the fares are going down is that within the last month, which, by the way, coincides with Trump taking office, fewer Americans are traveling. There seems to be a certain amount of caution and concern about, could be the state of the economy, could be the state of how much eggs cost, which hasn't gone down, by the way. People are now becoming a little more reluctant to spend on travel. And if you want to see a really serious drop, there's about a 25% drop in foreign travelers coming to the U.S. in the last month alone. The answer to that is easier to find. The latest surveys show that an overwhelming majority of the people who are not coming right now are doing so because they fear, it's a perception, of course, that America is no longer welcoming to them. Now, what that does to the balance of trade, especially when it comes to foreign exchange and travel, can't be overstated. We'll be following that, of course, as we get into the summer months. But right now, there's been a palpable drop in travel from the U.S. and especially travel to the U.S. And we can talk about that a little bit later. Let's go over and say hello to some folks here. Here we go. Jim and Harriet, always number one from Richmond, Virginia. Priya's watching from Chicago. Teddy's saying hello from sunny LA. Just got back from the Galapagos. Loved it. Thanks for picking one of my photos. Okay. Yeah, the Galapagos is amazing. What we love about the Galapagos is it's a one destination where you can give a shout out to a government, in this case, Ecuador, for severely limiting tourism there in a responsible way. No cruise ship can go to the Galapagos with any more than 100 passengers. That's a good thing. And if you're going ashore on a Zodiac, no more than 16 people at any one time with a responsible guide. The crews of all these ships have to all be Ecuadorian. There's nothing that's better than local knowledge. And so it really helps to preserve this amazing ongoing scientific research known as the Galapagos Islands. Go back and read Charles Darwin. Okay, let's move on. Paul is saying hi from Ashland, Virginia. Red saying watching from Omaha on a 58-degree sunny day, and it's February. Okay, Matthew saying hi from Syracuse. Jean saying hi from Tulsa. Sharon saying hello from New York City. Mary Jo saying hello from Pennsylvania. Okay, Paul says, I don't think Midway should be a commercial airport. It was designed back in the propeller age, not suitable for commercial and general aviation. Paul, I disagree. Midway Airport is my preferred airport in Chicago. As long as you don't try to put too big a plane on the ground, and some planes there, as you know, are weight restricted. So it is manageable. I would prefer Midway over O'Hare any day of the week, considering weather and traffic. But again, you know, when you pick a convenient airport, you more often than not limiting where you can fly or how far you can fly to or from. That's also true from Burbank in Los Angeles, and it's also true from Washington Reagan in DC, right? Runways are not that long. You're not going to see a lot of wide bodies, and you're sometimes limited in the distances you can fly, not just because of the range of the planes, but because how they're trying to preserve the airport into being much more of a regional airport. Some exceptions. I mean, there is one, I think, Washington Reagan to LA flight a day, but not 9. And the same thing with Midway. So I would respectfully disagree with you, but I understand your comments. All right. Joyce saying, going to Jamaica May 19th. When is the best time to purchase airfare? Right about now, right? Because you want to be about 54 days out. So you're almost in that window, and check it out. You're going at a good time of the year in May. It's not going to be too crowded. Camilla's saying hi from Tucson. And Patrick seems to be in Las Vegas. Tracy's saying good morning from Orinda, California. And Raymond saying a belated aloha from the Jersey Shore. Hello, Raymond. You owe me a phone call. Just thought I'd mention that. Evelyn saying hi. Paul says he's headed to Greece in late April, early May. Restaurants and must-see sites in these locations. You know what? Send me an email to that, Paul. We'll try to get back to you on that. I'm going to go to my special list on Greece to be able to get you that information. By the way, that means peter@petergreenberg.com. John is saying, hello, Peter, love from Paris. John travels more than I do these days. And he's always on the road. He's never back at home in New York or Florida where he kind of shares residences. So nice to see you online, John. Evelyn saying, concerns with current airplane issues. I don't blame you. But let me say one other thing. And we're not going to talk about the Southwest incident at Midway. When we take a look at what just happened over the last month and a half, the mid-air collision at Washington Reagan, the crash of the medical jet in Philadelphia, the runway incursion and the breaking off of the landing gear and the fatal crash on landing in Scottsdale, Arizona, the crash landing, it's all I can call it, the most amazing, miraculous crash in recent times in Toronto, where the plane inverted in an even keel. The aircraft did not break up. There was no post-crash fire, and all 80 people on board walked away. When you look at all of those incidents, including what happened at Midway, throw that one in there too, I can assure you there is no linkage. They're not connected in any way. They each have their own context and dynamics, but the issues that they raise are not insignificant in terms of FAA in Washington, D.C., in terms of allowing military aircraft to fly in congested airspace to begin with in Washington, D.C., how close there are planes to runways in Scottsdale, Arizona. And of course, we don't know much more about the crash of the medical jet in Philadelphia. And then finally, what happened in Toronto, which raises all sorts of questions, not about the FAA, but about who was flying that plane, what was their basic flight experience, and was this pilot error? Now, don't know the answer to that yet. Those are questions. But remember, in any accident investigation, the investigators have to rule everything out before they rule any one thing in. In this case, they've already ruled out wind as a factor, even though the wind had been gusty earlier that day, not particularly at that moment. They said the runway was hard, meaning it wasn't snow covered. So they ruled that out. They ruled out other things that might seem obvious now, but they have to rule them out one by one. They ruled out engine performance. They ruled out fuel. They ruled out any other kind of mechanical difficulty. Remember, they've already analyzed the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder, which would have given them some of that evidence had there been that. And now they're focusing on human factors and the pilots. And they're also looking at maintenance to see if any maintenance items were written up on that plane that would have affected its landing profile, its speed, and its altitude in Toronto. Obviously, we're staying on top of that as well. But again, I have to remind you, there is no connection whatsoever between any of those individual incidents, which should give you a little bit more confidence about flying or fear of flying. Okay, I just wanted to mention that. And then let's keep going with some folks who just signed in here so I can say hi to them. Hold on a second. I'm scrolling down. Okay, here we go. Hello from North Carolina to Juan. Oh, and to Krista. Okay, hello to you. Colleen says, I have a trip to Bologna, Dijon, and Paris for the month of April. I don't see any reason not to go. Do you? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. In fact, I'll be in Bologna in May. So, yeah, go. April is a great time to go. Let me keep scrolling up. Mike says Galapagos licensed ships are there year-round only. Are these year-round only? I'm not sure I understand the question, Mike. Can you just go back and ask it again? All right. I don't know what you're saying, Mike. I got to go back and look at this. We have a professor watching from the UAE, and Elle is watching from Charlotte. Evelyn is saying, we answered Evelyn's question. Let me keep going down here. Planning a trip to, okay, Juan says I'm planning a trip to Argentina and Antarctica in December 2025. Any restaurants recommendations in Buenos Aires? Oh, yeah, I do. I am now a pescatarian. I haven't eaten meat since November of 2008. So I can still make great meat recommendations, though. There's one in Buenos Aires that I suggest. It's called La Brigada. The meat there is, this sounds like I'm doing a bad brochure, but I'm telling you from personal experience, the meat there is so tender that when they bring it to your table, they cut it with a spoon, and it's that good. That's one. But go to the Palermo district in Buenos Aires. That's where you get unbelievable great meat dishes, along with some of the best. What kind of wine? Come on, what's Malbec, right? But in any case, and if you're going to Argentina and Antarctica, there's a good chance you'll be going through Ushuaia. That's at the southern tip of Argentina. And if you're doing that, one of my favorite restaurants in the world, believe it or not, is in Ushuaia. It's run by a husband and wife with their son, and it's called Kaupe, Kaupe. One of the most unexpectedly great meals I've ever had, not once, but twice. And Ushuaia itself is, to me, not the best destination in the world, but that's where your ship might leave from on its way down to the Antarctic. And if it is, make sure you get to Kaupe. You will not be disappointed. Let's keep going here. Okay. Costa says, Jim and Harriet say, any news on airline mergers? JetBlue is hurting for planes. Yeah, they were hurting for planes before when they tried to take over JetBlue, tried to take over Spirit. As you know, the federal government blocked that merger. There are all sorts of rumors right now. I'm not buying them, but the latest rumor is that JetBlue is trying to partner with Southwest. I'm not seeing that, but it is being talked about in the industry. Now, other than that, there are not that many other mergers to talk about, except other than one that's already been basically walked away from recently, and that was Spirit with Frontier. Doesn't mean they won't get back together again, but Spirit made the offer Frontier made the offer while Spirit was still in bankruptcy. Spirit has just exited bankruptcy, so maybe now they'll entertain the offer again at better deal terms for them. We shall see. Judy says, Mexico City, any restaurant recommendations? I've got one that might surprise you because it's in a hotel. It's the Intercontinental Hotel in Mexico City, which is part of the Presidente chain. Their signature restaurant there has something on the menu. I never fail to get it when I go. It's called Almejas Chocolatas. That means chocolate clams, but wait, it's not what you think. The actual outer shell of the clam is a dark brown. But the way they cook the clams, it's beyond belief. It's that good. Check it out. You will be a convert. I promise you. Okay, Linda says planning a trip to Georgia and Armenia this year. Is it safe to go to this area? Yeah. I've done it many times, and I think you'll have a great time. All right. Randy's saying hi from Aruba. Red is saying, speaking of Midway, not very many people know that Delta does fly there, so you don't have to deal with O'Hare. They do fly there, limited service to a number of cities, mostly either Salt Lake or Atlanta. Becca says, watching from the patio on a beautiful day in Jacksonville, Florida. Okay, Mike is now elaborating. He says, ships operating the Galapagos may only do so with a license from the government. That is true. The vessels operate there year-round and don't go anywhere else. No other cruise line can just come in for a day. Absolutely correct, Mike, and that was my point. They really protect the environment by not letting outsiders in, and they do so under serious restrictions that are worth it for not only the environment, but for the passengers. Judy says, when will Southwest Airlines start doing assigned seating? My guess is it's going to happen before May 1st. They could extend it to June 1st, but my hearing right now is May 1st. If we hear anything differently, I will be glad to tell you. A little housekeeping note, even though I'm in Malta this week, next week, a week from tomorrow, I'll be speaking at the Travel and Adventure Show in Denver, Colorado. And following that, the week after that, in Santa Clara, California, of course, in the San Francisco Bay Area. And then my final speech for the year at the Travel and Adventure Shows will be on March 29th and 30th at the Washington, D.C. Convention Center. I hope you'll come out and see me. Be glad to meet with you, of course, and answer any more questions that you might have. And I always love doing these shows. We had a great one last week in Los Angeles and hope to do another one in just a week, tomorrow, in Denver at the Convention Center in Colorado. So I hope you'll come out and see me. Thank you for posting that, Anthony. And speaking of posting things, I would be remiss if I didn't post this. The relief organizations that still need your help in recovering and to help in the recovery process for the terrible Los Angeles fires that happened in Pacific Palisades and Altadena. These people still have boots on the ground. It's a long recovery and rebuilding process. It's not going to be done anytime soon, but they will still be on the ground helping, because so many people were affected by this. So many of my friends lost literally everything they own. And I mean, my houses that I used to play in are, ashes. Restaurants where the restaurant where I had my very first date in Los Angeles, Moonshadows, gone. I mean, there's so many things that have significance, emotional, sentimental, and then of course, very real reasons have been destroyed, and people have been literally displaced, and many of them may never even be coming back. But that doesn't mean the recovery effort is over. It's just getting started. Operation USA, in the interest of full disclosure, I'm on the board of that. They do incredible work. The LAFD Fire Department Foundation, always great. Direct Relief, and of course, the American Red Cross. Please do whatever you can. It may not be on the news tonight. There may not be any images of fires to get your attention, but I'm here to get your attention to let you know people still need your help, and please do everything you can to help in any way you can. Okay? Let's go to some of the questions you've asked during the week. Here's one from, I see what we have here. Here's one from Matthew. What is the safety record of the Boeing 737-800? It's actually excellent. I have no trouble flying it. Felix says, is Chase Sapphire the best travel rewards credit card? Well, let's get into that in a little more detail. What's your definition of a travel reward? Mileage you can't redeem? Ever? So I'm getting rid of all my airline mileage cards that are linked to a particular airline frequent flyer program. It's a lost cause. You're chasing miles with credit card purchases. To get miles, they won't let you redeem. And even if they did, many of you are paying upwards of 27% interest on those credit cards, compounded monthly, which means even if you can finally get ahead of your balance and pay it off in full, by the time you redeem that ticket, considering the airlines change the redemption levels at will and almost daily, that's not a free ticket anymore. That's thousands of dollars you paid in interest to try to redeem miles at a level they promised you that they're no longer keeping the promise. So to answer your question, Felix, Chase Sapphire Reserve is one of the best travel rewards cards because they basically, you accumulate points that have dollar value. They take that and literally buy you a ticket. So you're not waiting for the possibility of a frequent flyer reward ticket. They're buying you a full fare, but a purchased airline ticket that has value and that you can use. Capital One Venture X, also good. And then Discover, believe it or not, because it's a cash back card. So those are the ones I like. If you're holding a Citibank card with American or a Chase card with United or Southwest or a American Express card with Delta, you might want to rethink all this. All right, I just thought I'd mention that. And let's keep going on the questions here. Okay. Janice says, is there a way to get rid of the fear of flying? I have an answer. I'm not being silly. Fly. The more you fly, the more you'll understand what those noises are, or what those rhythms are, or what those movements are. And, keep looking out the window and you'll see there's a cause and effect relationship that works in your favor if you understand what's going on. Now, there are fear of flying classes. Not that many, but there are. And you know what the graduation is for that class? You all get on a plane and fly. So you want to avoid the cost of a fear of flying class? Just fly. I know that sounds simple. I'm not trying to be condescending, but the more you fly, the better you're going to feel. I'm serious. Okay. The next question I love. I have a 5-hour layover at LAX. Is it worth it to buy a lounge pass for $59? Depends on what you want to do in the lounge. You want to sleep? You want to work? You want to eat? Which one? If you want to sleep, that presumes there's space in the lounge. If you want to work, that presumes there's space in the lounge. And and if you want to eat, I didn't wake up in the morning to get sweaty pretzels or bad hummus. There are a couple of very VVIP lounges that have better food, but let's be honest, folks. Just like airline food is an oxymoron, lounge food is a close second in the oxymoron department. The only reason why I want to stay in a lounge for 5 hours is if I really needed a place to sleep, and that's not a lounge because they'll charge you if you want a bed in an international lounge. And if I want to work, I just need access to Wi-Fi that's strong and not being diluted by everybody watching their favorite Netflix programs while they're waiting for their plane. So I gave you a qualified yes. Now you'll have to make that decision. Okay. Elle says, my husband and I want to visit Tanzania for around 2 weeks and then go to Zanzibar for a few days. We are arriving the 5th of August. We have a budget of $8,000 total, international flights included. International flights excluded. Do you have advice for Tanzania on a budget? Well, yeah. First of all, what is it that you want to do when you're there? Do you want to go on a safari and see the big five? There are numbers of safari operators that can do that for you that will not be overpriced. That's number one. Number two, how much time do you want to spend in Tanzania versus Zanzibar in a realistic way? What I would do if I were you, I'd spend 1 or 2 fewer days in Tanzania and 1 or 2 more days in Zanzibar, and then treat yourself on your last day there in Zanzibar. Stay at the Park Hyatt, right on the water, gorgeous, or treat yourself and go over to the island of Pemba, which is right off the coast of Zanzibar, for an amazing resort experience where you can actually sleep underwater. It's brilliant. So check that out. Okay. Here's one from Nadia. How will Trump's cuts impact national parks this summer? Well, they already have. I don't foresee any national parks closing this summer, but I do see them changing their hours because they won't be able to staff up. And I do see them changing their reservations policies because of the crowds. To me, I would wait and not try to go to a national park this summer. It's going to be overcrowded. My magic month has been and will always be September. Okay. Lee says, is Cozumel safe to visit on a Carnival cruise this year? I'm worried about things with the political climate the way it is right now. I am just scared because this is my first cruise. Would you consider it safe? Lee, I do consider it safe with a caveat. When you go off the ship, leave your jewelry in your cabin. Don't walk with a handbag with a big handle. Just take what you could possibly ever need, maybe a little bit of cash, some credit cards, and your ID, and put it somewhere like in a money belt, and just enjoy your time in Cozumel. The worst thing that's happened in Cozumel, in my experience, has been a couple of purse snatches and a couple of pickpockets. And by the way, you can do that right on 42nd Street in New York, no questions asked. So it doesn't stop me from going to Cozumel, but it does stop me from doing something stupid like thinking I should wear all my jewelry on the streets. Answer, don't do it, and then go have a great time. Okay. Ali says, we are spending 2 weeks in Portugal in May, and I want to spend time in Porto and Lisbon. We are torn between time in the Douro Valley, or, did I pronounce that right? In the Douro Valley, or going to the southern part for the third part location, what do you recommend? I'm a huge, well, if you just spend time in Lisbon and then do day trips out of Lisbon to Cascais and Sintra, you'll be fine, right? And Estoril, don't forget that. These are little day trips you can do. And then spend the rest of the time in Porto. It's an amazing city. And by the way, I always have to give a shout out to this restaurant in Porto. I go back at least once a year because I can't keep away from the place. It's called 1756. That's the name of the restaurant. And the dish you want to order is the salmon tataki. I am not exaggerating when I tell you that 3 of my friends, I sent them there and told them they couldn't go to that restaurant without ordering it. And all 3 came back and said, not only did I order it, I ordered a second order too. It was that good. Check out that restaurant, 1756 in Porto. All right, now it's time to go to the photo of the week. And Theodora Reyes, she took this. I love this. You know, we talked about Galapagos earlier. Wait for the light and look what you get. And Theodora writes, while sailing away from San Cristobal at sunset, we came upon León Dormido, commonly referred to as Kicker Rock. This rock formation is a sheer walled tough cone that is eroded in half. There is beauty everywhere you look on the Galapagos Islands. I couldn't agree more. And if you got your camera ready, always wait for the light. We have the magic hour between, let's say, 6:30 and 7:30 in the morning, and between, with the exception of daylight savings time, 4:30 to 5:45 in the afternoon. Congratulations, Theodora. If you think you have a photo that qualifies as the photo of the week, you know what to do. Send it to photo contest at petergreenberg.com. And if we agree, it hangs up there right next to Theodora's. Let's scroll down and see a few more people before we run out of time. Where are we here? Okay. Marinaz says, I'm watching from Iran. All right, where in Iran? Tell me. Okay. Michael says, I'm coming to see me in DC. Thank you, Michael. Bruce is saying, hi, Peter and Anthony from East Islip, New York. That's where Bruce lives. And a shout out to Bruce because he's also a volunteer fireman just like me. Thank you for your service, Bruce. Judy says, do you really live on a boat in Los Angeles? Yes, Judy, I really do live on a boat in Los Angeles. And I'll surprise you even more. I've been on that boat in Los Angeles, on that same boat for the last 31 years. Now, I also live in New York and Long Island and Fire Island. But when I'm in Los Angeles, I'm in Marina del Rey and love that boat. Although, how many people tell you that the 2 best days in your life are when you buy a boat and sell a boat? I beg to disagree. I've had an amazing 3 decades on one boat, and I couldn't be happier. All right. Here we go. Carmen says we'll be making a 2-day stop in Luxembourg in late May. Any recommendations? Well, you didn't tell me where you're making a 2-day stop in Luxembourg from. Because if you look at the map, you can be in Luxembourg for breakfast, Paris for lunch, and Belgium for dinner. That's how close the distances are. So before I answer that question, tell me where you're coming in from. Okay? Oh, by the way, Anthony was nice enough to just post this. If you want to come see me at any of the travel and adventure shows, either in Denver or Santa Clara or Washington, D.C., go to their website and then use code Greenberg VIP because you'll get a discounted ticket. How about that? I didn't even know about that. There you go. Okay. Now, before we say goodbye, a couple of other housekeeping notes. You know, I mentioned all those relief organizations in Los Angeles doing that hard work. The radio show tomorrow is coming to you from the legendary Peninsula Hotel in Beverly Hills, California. We went out there because so many people, it happened after the fires in Maui. It's happened after natural disasters in the rest of the country, like hurricanes and floods in Asheville, North Carolina. So many people think that because one community gets affected or one part of a community gets affected, that everything is closed and shut down. That is not the case in Maui, never was the case in Maui, even though Lahaina got devastated and leveled. The rest of Maui was open for business and still is. That's number one. Number two, the same is true in Southern California. Yes, Pacific Palisades, it's horrendous, the damage there. But just 3 miles away, you have Beverly Hills, fully open for business, great restaurants, great activities, and a great history. And the same applies to the rest of Southern California outside of Altadena. And that includes Anaheim for Disneyland and everywhere else. So I hope you'll tune in tomorrow, 10:05 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern time. If you don't have a station in your market, no problem. Just go to our website, petergreenberg.com, hit the icon for the radio show, and we stream it live starting at 10:05 a.m. Eastern time. And I hope you'll join me there. Lots of stuff to talk about, including, of course, an update on aviation safety and an update on what life is like in Beverly Hills in 2025 when people think they can't come. You know what that means? No crowds, better service. Think about it. A big shout out to Anthony for doing the boards out in California. Again, we're coming to you from the Indiala Hotel right here on the beautiful island of Malta. And we will see you next week from another remote location somewhere around the world. We'll post where that location will be and what day we'll do the global travel update in just a few days. Have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe, and we'll see you next week.
Peter Greenberg's live global travel update is presented to you by Colette. Discover the world. Guided travel since 1918.